Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of the Thrive Careers Podcast, where we dive into exciting conversations. And today we are going to be talking about executive transitions, unlocking hidden opportunities, and landing your next role. So, whether you're an executive considering a career change or you're just looking for strategies to elevate your job search, this episode is packed with insights that will guide you to success. And we are beyond thrilled to have a special guest, joining us today, Gina Riley. She is a dynamic human resources professional who sits at the powerful intersection of career coaching, executive search, and interview skills training. You will enjoy today's episode, no doubt. So I'll just tell you to sit back and enjoy the conversation. Thank you, Gina, for joining us on today's conversation.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited for our conversation today.
Excited. So to get us started, do you want to tell us, more about the Velocity project, and why you started?
Absolutely. So with my background in HR, corporate HR, and also conducting executive searches, it led me on a path to helping executives who were trying to intentionally make a job change or a career transition. And I studied the market for 18 months. I read 20 books. I listened to 120 podcasts. I love podcasts. And I took notes on all of it. And I worked with executives and I could hear and see the stumbling blocks they had that were really stopping them from getting seen and heard, if you will. So with the executive search hat and going to market for CEO, CFO searches, etc., I was watching people blow the interviews ultimately. But most people really start from a place of, I haven't had to look for a job before. Where do I start? And what I found was people initially can't tell their story. So when they're asked, tell me about yourself, they stumble over that first thing that they have to get through, that gate, before then they can start talking about their experiences. So career velocity, to answer your question, is an answer to these problems. Phase 1, developing your unique value proposition. Phase 2 is preparing your marketing, resume, LinkedIn, interview prep, and job search strategy. And then phase 3 is a thought leadership strategy. And it's comprehensive because I think it takes all the moving parts to do it effectively.
Amazing stuff. I love the fact that, you saw a problem, a challenge, and you created, a solution, which a lot of people can benefit from. And that's really exciting. And we'll deep dive further into that, as we continue our conversation today. But, just to build up on your thoughts, I would like you to share with us, how executives who are looking to build their career can craft a successful transition.
Yes, I have answers for that, as you can imagine. So let's start with that phase 1, developing the unique value proposition. It's a lot more than just creating what I would call an elevator pitch. An elevator pitch is a truncated way of describing what you do, and it's like a marketing or branding statement. It may last 60 to 90 seconds, the length of an elevator ride. Developing your unique value proposition within the career velocity framework is 5 phases. Phase 1 is developing content around your unique talents. I use StrengthsFinder, your values, your motivated and burnout skills, and your personality. I use a tool called the UMAP profile to uncover this with my clients, and people can do it on their own. You don't have to hire a coach to do that. Phase 2 is developing language around your leadership approach. So when you're answering questions in interviews, you're infusing how you do what you do with your talents and your values and your why, infused with how you execute as a leader. Because you need to convincingly explain to decision makers the kind of person that you are when you show up to do your work. Then the third part of the unique value proposition is unraveling the themes and patterns of your career. Some of us have twisty, turny careers, and some of us have more of a straight line. But what's the story in there? Because a lot of people, especially with straight lines, will think, well, I don't know what's unique and special about me. I've been just an engineering manager and then an engineering leader and so on. I believe everyone has a unique story and we have to uncover it with those 3 phases. Then what I'm doing in phases 4 and 5 is figuring out what are those key results that you have gotten throughout your career that you're really going to be speaking about in your interviews and get onto your resume. And then finally, I have a framework for answering tell me about yourself. That's the fifth part of phase one that's built upon those first four phases and all that language we extract about you as a person. And the cool thing about this is you can take this with you, this storytelling with you from job to job, throughout the rest of your career, when you go to networking events, when you meet new people in your next company, all of that.
Amazing stuff. So I wanted you to just narrow down on one of the aspects that you mentioned, and it's infusing our personality. I've worked as a talent acquisition specialist, and I've seen how people's personality made a difference, especially in interview situations. So I really want you to drill down more on that, on how people can showcase their personalities, their essence, especially in interview situations.
I like the word that you use there, their accents. So let's talk about what you're accentuating. Let's play off of that word. That's beautiful. So I'll do some storytelling. I'm currently working with a really senior product manager at one of the biggest global companies in the world. And she leads 20 product managers and puts out, and we're using their products and services like all around. Millions, maybe billions of us are using their products. And when she would go to tell her interview stories, she would tee up the situation and then kind of go right for what the team was working on and what they delivered. And because I had done the unique value proposition work, I knew there was all of that extra juice behind the leadership approach and how she would approach challenges infused with her natural talents or her strengths from StrengthsFinder, which talents are not our personality. It's how we build relationships, how we execute, how we learn, etc. And so I already knew that one of her top strengths is context. She likes to get the historical perspective before she goes and tackles some kind of challenge. And she's a learner. So she's using her historical context and her learning, and she goes and talks to anybody who has any touch to the problem or the story, whether or not they have direct influence on the problem, and puts together storytelling and data, and then would go and present to 12 VPs to get funding for the product development she was working on. And she would skip over all of that extra stuff when explaining how she would execute. And so back to your question is, how do you accentuate your differentiators? You must do this front end work. You must figure out what it is that makes you unique in your approach. Sure, there could have been another product leader in her role and still done a great job with their own set of skills, but how does she do it? And she needs to take that and convincingly tell the next decision maker outside of this company so that they can see her in their company doing that same kind of work.
Amazing. Yes. So let's, deep dive into the hidden job market. I was still having a conversation with someone yesterday about, how he landed a role that had not even been advertised, and he had already secured the role because of internal referral. So many executive roles aren't advertised. So can you tell us how leaders can tap into the hidden job market strategy and position themselves for top opportunities?
Absolutely. So let's start with, what is the hidden job market? And the first thing I always say is, it is not a place where jobs are intentionally hiding from you. They're not in the corner behind a plant where you can't see them. This is what is happening. There is a leadership team in a group meeting, and one of the people says one of these kinds of things. I'm retiring, or I have an internal job change, or I'm going on a medical leave, or maybe that person is getting fired. They're getting let go. They don't know. And the first thing that team is thinking and saying is, hey, team, who do we know? And the first thing they're going to do is start thinking of the people that they know, like, and trust already, who have built a brand and reputation, so that at least they can get the ball rolling, seeing if there's interest out there. They may hire an executive search firm. They may post the job visibly. It may still happen. And yet you have this competition that already started happening before the job even went live. So I like to say that the hidden job market is where jobs are just percolating. They haven't even fully formed them yet. There may not even be a fully formed job description. So the question is, how do you become in the line of sight for these opportunities? One, do not sit and wait to get plucked out of obscurity. Nobody's coming for you unless you've already built up a great brand reputation where you're always top of mind. What you need to do is, even when you're comfortable and happy in your job, you need to be thinking 1 or 2 chess moves ahead. You need to be having conversations as a regular part of having a healthy career, so that when you need to activate your network, that it doesn't feel like now you have to go into sell mode.
Amazing. So nurturing your network, basically, before, not just when you need them, that's how to position for such opportunities. So do you think that thought leadership and personal branding plays any role in this?
100%. That is exactly what needs to happen. So 1, you should always know what your unique value proposition is. That's that first part of career velocity. But then what we're going to do is kind of skip ahead and talk about what does it mean to be networking, having a great networking strategy, and thought leadership. These are the things that help us showcase our unique value proposition. Because how are you going to be known for something unless you put it out there? It doesn't mean that you have to be planning for a TED Talk. What it does mean is that you're participating in your industry communities, in your functional area of expertise. If you're a marketing leader, maybe you're going to marketing conferences. If you're in a certain technology space, whatever that is, that you're an active participant. Perhaps you're trying to showcase what you know through speakerships, panel discussions. Maybe you're collaborating on white papers. Maybe you're working with your internal communications team and putting out short form content, either written or video on LinkedIn. There's so many ways to showcase your thought leadership in micro bite-sized pieces that help you stay relevant in your ecosystem. And if you are relevant, you will be more thought of.
Amazing stuff. I have a follow-up question to that. And I know that one of the challenges that a lot of people have is they understand the place of thought leadership, they understand personal branding, they're pushing themselves to do all of those things, but then they don't see traction. People don't engage their content, and it looks like nothing is happening. There is that possibility for a lot of people to withdraw and just get tired. So what word of encouragement do you have for people like that?
Boy, there's so much to go on here. There's so much to go on. So I'm going to start with one thing and end with kind of another. One is, I think I told you, I just wrote a book that will be out in September, and it's based on my career velocity model. And what I want to do is zone in on chapter 9, which is about thought leadership. By the way, the book is called Qualified Isn't Enough. And it's really about, many of us are qualified to do a job, and you have to assume that there will be other people equally as qualified. What is the thing that throws you into becoming the candidate of choice? And then it goes back to that unique value proposition. So let's talk about chapter 9, thought leadership. One is, I wouldn't just plunge into thought leadership and just start posting stuff. What I would do is first think strategically about, 1, who are your key audiences you're trying to reach? Are you talking to everyone? Probably not. Just like in marketing our company products, it's not necessarily for everyone. So think about who those key stakeholders are: up, sideways, down, and out. So if you're a leader, the board might be seeing what you post. Investors, your CEO, your team leadership, your employees. That's probably one of the most important audiences to build your tribe internally. Then we're looking at vendors, suppliers, customers, potential other companies that are in competitive organizations that may want to poach you and hire you in the future. First, figure out who you're talking to, because then you're speaking the language of the people you're trying to really reach, and not everyone. Then, and I have frameworks for all of this in my book. And then what you're really trying to do is figure out what the best platforms are for you, like where you can actually sustain yourself with the thought leadership, and thinking about, where does my audience hang out? So for me, I'm a career coach, primarily for leaders and executives. My tribe is going to be hanging out mostly on LinkedIn for professional related content. Then there's other places. It might be at conferences. There could be other places as well. But I'm not doing Instagram posts, for example, because I can't imagine my archetype just scrolling through LinkedIn and going, I'm going to hire Gina Riley as my career coach, right? So think about where these people are. And then the third step is figure out, what are you going to be comfortable doing first? So for most people, it's not just jumping on video. For a lot of people, it's short form LinkedIn posts, sharing articles, writing why they're sharing it, and drawing in conversation from the people in their professional community. I do have a story. I have a story for you that
Yes,
exemplifies what can be done. So I feature this story in my book, and I call my former client Chris. That is not his real name. I started working with him at the beginning of last year. And as we worked together and all through his UVP work and all of the things, he ended up coming in number 2 for a job that he already had a line on and got the internal scoop on through the hidden job market. And then he came in number 2 because an internal candidate was selected because they were afraid of losing him. And so while he was job searching and kept his day job going, he started posting on LinkedIn, and he had never posted except for 6 years prior. 6-year gap. So it's tough because, he's in his 50s. He's like, I don't want to put myself out there. What if people think that I'm being a showboat? So he just starts slow, and we built up a content strategy, and he starts talking about sales leadership and his approach to mentorship and his approach to leadership, and occasionally something personal and occasionally something about diversity, all the things that he actually stands for. 80 posts he does in the year. When he lands a job back at that first company who initially didn't hire him, they had let the other person go. They called him directly. Now that's a hidden job market. They don't go back to market. They hire him. And he starts as a VP global sales leader. And as he's meeting internal people in this massive company, people are coming up and shaking his hand and saying, Chris, I feel like I already know you because I've been following your posts on LinkedIn all year long. They already know. They know who he is because he put himself out there.
Amazing. And I think, you strategically answered my question, because with this beautiful story, and I love it, Chris had been posting, doing all of those stuff, and he didn't even realize who was reading. So you said so much, but for anyone out there who, you've been posting, you've been doing all of those things, you've been grinding, and you feel like no one is seeing you, I can assure you that people are seeing it, and at the right time, you would see the effect. So please keep doing it. And something very important that Gina also attested to is strategy. Have a strategy that you're working with. Find out where your listeners are so that you are pulling in the right direction. Thank you so much, Gina, for sharing that line of thoughts with us. I don't know Chris, but congratulations to Chris. I love that strategy.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I think, there's really just nothing we can achieve without networking. It's so big, and there are so many sides to it. So how do you think that people can expand their professional network and get noticed by decision makers?
There's a lot of ways. One is I do believe in having a targeted job search strategy. So actually starting with creating a list of 40, prioritizing them as into the top 5, and whether you don't have a job at all, or whether you're just planning your next move, so to speak, you want to start reaching out to people in those companies and building some relationships, or figuring out where those people hang out. Because now you can get into relationship building mode versus I have to go sell myself for a job, because we all know that that's the hardest way to go about it. The other thing is like going to conferences. Like for me, like when I am thinking about networking expansively, and I attend a conference in advance, I go and I look at all the speakers who are going to be speaking at that event. And then I maybe not connect with every single one, but I strategically reach out to the ones that are the most interesting to me and say, hey, can't wait to hear your presentation. I'm going to be at XYZ conference. Really looking forward to it. They usually say yes because I'm not asking for anything, right? Other than the connection. I try to meet them when I'm there. Hello, how are you? But here's what happens. Now I have expanded my network just being a part of assume a lot of these people are industry experts or may have an expansive network. Now I'm connected to the right people, and I'm 2 degrees closer to the other people in their network. I am now more findable by relevant people that are relevant to them. In LinkedIn, we're connected by 3 degrees of separation. So what you want to do is strategically connect with the right people. You're not trying to connect with everyone, but you also don't, you need to think outside of the box. And so for me, when I have done these kinds of things, or I've read an article that someone wrote from the Harvard Business Review, from Forbes, anywhere, and I think it's really interesting, Rutgers University, I reach out to them and say, I read this article. This is what it meant to me. Keep up the good work. Would love to, connect with you and follow everything else you're putting out there. And then sometimes it leads to opportunities. So like with the case of Rutgers, they invited me to be on a panel discussion on, helping women with career transitions and interview prep, which is an opportunity to showcase my thought leadership. Mm-hmm. So these are the ways that you can connect with people and network organically to get your thought leadership out there. And now you're networking and doing thought leadership.
Amazing stuff. Let's talk about winning job offer. From your experience, what strategies do you think that successful CEO candidates, use to secure job offers?
Yeah. Well, as you can imagine, I have an answer for that.
Absolutely.
Down to is my chapter 7, which is on interview prep. And from my experience working with executives for extended periods of time, planning for their interviews and career transitions, and in interviewing people, being the most prepared person in the room is the best way to set yourself up to get that job offer. There are things that are out of your control, and no matter how much you prep, you may come in number 2. And I actually have 2 stories in my book about 2 clients that came in number 2. I went ahead and just said, here's where it didn't work. And then when they did get an offer from that same company, and Chris is one of them, the other one is an even cooler story. Preparation. It takes up to 40 hours of prep by the time you're winning that job offer. So up front, the first recruiter call is going to be 10, 15 hours of, prep to get ready. You're studying the company history, their values, their culture, their financials, their investors, their customers, suppliers, the whole ecosystem. And you're dissecting the job description, and you're thinking about how you're going to tell stories that amplify that you know how to do what they say they need. And you also need to see around the corner a little bit and anticipate what they need even when they don't know it themselves. Because sometimes you're the content expert and they're not. So I think to just streamline what I just said, to answer your question, how do you win the job? You are the most prepared person you can be, and you read every single room you are in. And what I mean by that, and this is a room too, virtually, right, is frontline recruiters, what is it that they need you to be sharing with them that help them be successful at their job so that they do pass you on? And then if it's an executive search consultant, it's going to be a different level experience and a different level of questions, as you know, right, from being a TA. And then a hiring manager is going to have different concerns and a different perspective. Teammates, usually there's team interviews or panels. If you're very senior, you're going to interview with the board or a board chair. Every decision maker has their own priorities, and you need to have already been thinking about that in advance. That is not winging it. That is not going into the interview just like reading the company page. It is a lot of work.
Amazing. It goes back to preparation, doing your homework before actually showing up. And I think that's just encompasses everything, that can help one to stand out as a candidate of choice. And thank you so much, Gina, for sharing that powerful, perspective with us. All right. So I think that brings us to the end of our core conversation for today. But before we let you go, we definitely want to take you on a rapid fire round. Let's get to know a bit of your personality. Our audience would love to know. So so what's the best career advice you've ever received?
Gosh, for me, I had a very specific moment where I got stuck. I worked really hard on a particular year at Intel, and I thought I was going to get a promotion. And I was also trying to move into a specific kind of role. I wanted to be an HR business partner. So I had this kind of defeat that one year where I didn't get the promo I thought I would. And I was getting blocked from getting into this role I wanted, which at the time they were requiring a master's degree. So the best advice that I actually finally took was taking the steps to get what I needed, the credentials. I got a master's degree, and I had sponsorship because of it to land the job when I got done. So I had the mentorship. I had people who were going to advocate for me when I did what they told me to go do, and I doubled down on myself and I invested in myself to do it.
Amazing stuff. I love it. The action word for me is you took the step that you needed to take to achieve what you want to achieve, and that's it for me. Thank you. So let's talk about book recommendation. What book do you think every executive should read? And I think I have an answer for this, but go for it.
Fair. That's not fair. I'm going to give you a swath because that's not fair. Okay, during the job search, you want to buy Steve Dalton's 2-Hour Job Search book, second edition, and you want the actual book. It will help you create your list of 40. Then you want Kate Dixon's Pay Up book. She has written exactly the language that you can use to negotiate your salary and all the things that you use to prioritize what is important to you. I buy those 2 books for all of my clients and ship them the actual book right here, right? Then a lot of people do not win the job because they do not have executive presence. Executive presence is 3 things: how we appear, how we speak, and how we act. So our appearance, our communication, and our gravitas, our behaviors. There are 17 micro dimensions, and a lot of people don't do the communication and the behaviors, the gravitas, very well. So I wrote a 3-part series, but this is Sylvia Ann Hewlett's book that it's based off of, called Executive Presence: The Difference Between Merit and Success, meaning qualified isn't enough. You have to show up with the communication and the behaviors to be the candidate of choice, especially for a high stakes leadership job. So that's 3 books right there.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And lastly, so fun fact, what's one surprising or unexpected talent of yours that most people wouldn't know?
An unexpected talent? I don't know. I talk about myself plenty, so I feel like I'm an open book. Unexpected talent. Okay, so I am a great scratch cook. So I'm the type of person that can go open up my fridge, and based on whatever is in there, I can put together a very tasty meal, and it's not a big deal. And I don't enjoy following recipes. Really good at it, and I passed it on in my genes to my 2 sons who are 22.
Amazing. Amazing. And I love it. That was really unexpected. Thank you so much, Gina. This has been an amazing conversation. Thank you for, sharing what executives need to do, land their dream jobs, to show up like the person who they really want to be. And, for sharing all of those deep thoughts, the book selections, the practical strategies, action steps that people can take to get into the positions that they really want to get into. So before we let you go, finally, where can people find you and connect with your work?
Yeah, thanks for asking. I'm at GinaRileyConsulting.com. I recommend reaching out to me through LinkedIn and do a personalized connection request and let me know that you heard me on this podcast. It's great to know that the messages are getting out there, and you always want to personalize. And then I would say, if some of the ideas were insightful for you, go to my website. I am starting a book launch, list, so that when I get closer to the launch date, that I'll start informing people about, when it's coming out, because I put everything into that. All of my frameworks are in there.
Amazing. Listeners, that's a big one for you. You want to jump on that. Thank you so much, Gina, for letting us know. So what would be your last words as we wrap up this session on today's episode?
It's the message from my book, which is, if you've been spraying and praying, applying, you're not hearing back, and you believe that you're qualified for all the jobs that you're applying to, remember, being qualified isn't enough. You need to develop your story so that you can land interviews and win the job. And that's what it takes.
There's no better way to end this session than on that wonderful note. Thank you so much, Gina, for this time out with you. So that brings us to the end of today's episode. I hope that you found this insightful and useful. So until we come your way again next time, keep thriving. Thank you, Gina, and bye for now.